Well, good afternoon, everyone, or good evening as the case may be. Today is March 7th, 2013. This is a quick start webinar to help you make 2013 your best year yet with the keys that are available to you from Take Charge of Your Talent. We want to highlight that the perfect moment to take charge of your talent and to start making 2013 be the way you'd like is right now. And so Jay and I are going to do our best to help you figure out how to participate in this session and how to get the most out of it for yourself as we go along the way. So I'm looking to continue on here with the next slide, and I think we're all in good shape to do that. So here are the objectives that we have for this webinar. We want to spark ways for you to get the most out of this. And the theme is making 2013 your best year yet, which is an interesting theme. I know when I put that forward, I sort of thought to myself, wow, 2013, my best year yet. I've had some great years. How is this one going to be even better? So I found it a personal challenge to think about how to do that, and hope that you're looking into the same way. Your best days are not behind you. They're ahead, no matter what your accomplishments have been, and we want to help you add new chapters to your talent story that are exciting and inspiring for you. We want to stimulate your use of the keys to unlock that potential. Want to answer your questions. We did receive some questions in advance, and we've factored those into the presentation so we can respond to them. We're also going to give you some polling questions to get some feedback from you and to target how to make this webinar of maximum value to you. And we want to invite you to become part of the Take Charge movement and actually part of a community that's seeking to make these keys available to not only yourselves but to others as well, and to enjoy a rewarding experience with this effort. So our view is that each of you has a treasure chest of talent. The question is how to unlock it, and that's what this book and our effort is all about. And one of the things that we discovered is we've worked with thousands of people in dozens of organizations, large and small, for-profit and not-for-profit, is that 30 to 40% of the talent that those folks have is untapped. Now you might sort of think, well, that's sort of an average or whatever, but we really found it to hold even very strongly for the best and the brightest people and in excellent organizations. That everyone seems to have a significant amount of talent that's untapped, and maybe even more that they don't know is untapped because they just haven't had an opportunity to check it out. So the question is, how do we unlock that? How can we help each other to do that? And how do we change the talent stories that we have from one where we feel like a victim, and that is a victim of our circumstances? I know many times people comment, well, you know, I can do much more with my talent, but I don't have the time. The economy's down. We don't have it in the budget. My boss won't let me. I've got conflicting priorities at home, you know, all of which have an element of truth to them. And so it isn't as if, you know, those are false stories. But the question for each of us is, do we want our talent story to end in the chapter that we are? You know, do we want it to be stuck? Or do we want to move forward and to become the hero of our talent story? So that's really the question. The question is how to accomplish that, and how to have this work effectively. Now, why Take Charge of Your Talent works is that it combines the latest insights from neuroscience and how it is that our brain works most productively when we're dealing with issues, and psychology of, you know, what's the best way to call upon our capabilities, and then decades of experience that we've had in coaching people to unlock that talent and to help them enjoy it effectively. So we've pulled all these together in the book Take Charge of Your Talent, and hope that you've had an opportunity to read through the book. If you haven't completed it or haven't even cracked it open, this is an intro for you, or a reminder for you of some of the key points, and we'll take a look at how you can put those all into practice effectively for yourself. One of the things we want to highlight is that while you can do this on an individual basis with someone else, you can also do this as part of an organization, and that creates a lot of additional value. So One of the things we want to do to kick this off with you and make it interactive and to focus on what's of most interest to you is to ask you a couple key questions. And for that, we're going to go to the polling questions here. And these go to the talent checklist and asking you, what do you want? So here are some choices. We ask you to use the webinar function here and click on as many of these as you'd like, as are relevant to you and important in how you function or how you'd like to function, and that way we'll know what it is that you're looking for and how to allocate the time across the session most effectively. And Jay, if you could help us, I know your voice and head cold are huge for you, but if you could just track for us, what some of these key ones are and help me and the audience make sure we get back to them, that would be really useful. Okay, so making better use of talent, I'm seeing is significant here. We'll take a moment more to let other people respond. We've got a few more that haven't had a chance to respond yet. If you would like to participate in the poll, please do now so we can move forward. Okay, let's take a look at what the results are. Well, a lot of things are of interest. Making better use of your talent and identifying and tapping resources seem to come out most high, but all the others are also significant for you in terms of what you're looking at. It's interesting. We found that there's a very close correlation between people making better use of their talent and having greater satisfaction in their work. At first, it was very surprising to us how tight that correlation is. But then as you think about it, if people aren't making good use of their talent, they're probably not feeling as fulfilled about their work. And similarly, if they're not feeling really fulfilled about their work, but they're not using their talent effectively, there's going to be a problem from an employer's point of view or from their career point of view. So it makes sense that these things correlate. There are some other things we wanted to know about that continue with this question. So we'll give you a moment here to respond to that. While I'll also take a look at any questions or comments that have come in thus far so we can be responding a little bit to those as we go along. And we'll be addressing this question about how can a catalyst help somebody get through a block if they haven't been in that particular person's role or shoes. We'll get to that when we talk about the talent catalyst and how that functions and give you some examples of that working. So we'll get to that in just a moment. So we're waiting for you to provide a few more responses here so we get a good read on how this looks for you overall. In terms of, what are the things that you want to get out of putting your talent into practice, and what's important to you in accomplishing that. So let's just take a quick look here at how this came out. And so what we're seeing here is building some tangible talent assets to enhance your career opportunities came out very high, also making a bigger contribution to others, taking pride in your work, enjoying a better balance were some of the things that came out very strongly. I noticed that developing inner qualities came out a little bit lower. We'll be talking about that and talking about why that's sort of hand in hand with accomplishing some of these other objectives. So we'll take a look at these results and factor them into our discussion as we go forward. So while we're have a number of things we want to cover with you, I do want to also address some of the questions that you sent in. So we got a question, how can we motivate others to move forward when it's hard for us to move forward? Wow, that's a good question. So I'm interpreting from this that you're asking, well, if there aren't opportunities for you to move forward, how can you be encouraging others and motivating them to move forward? And that's a critical question. One of the issues, of course, is, are there opportunities for you to move forward that you might not be aware of? some of you may have read the story in the book about Sheila, who thought she couldn't really move forward in her career because she was bogged down as a manager, much like a mid-career professional that someone else asked the question about, and couldn't move forward with her work because she thought, well, I've got my people working as hard as they can work. I'm working as hard as I can work. I guess there's just no opportunity for me to go on and take more responsibility in the organization because I'm just maxed out. One of the things she discovered from her Talent Catalyst conversation is that she could really have many more opportunities to pursue those interests than she thought. And in fact, as she had Talent Catalyst conversations with people in her organization that were reporting to her, she discovered that many of them were interested in learning and picking up skills and capabilities of things that she was doing. So she sort of said to herself, aha, you know, I don't have to be stuck. I actually have people who, out of their own self-motivation, want to be moving forward. And so therefore, I can free up my time by creating opportunities for them to grow in their careers and perspectives. So what we found with this is that when you have the benefit of another perspective, and that's what the Talent Catalyst is about, that we're going to talk about in a little bit more detail in a few minutes, that it really can stimulate some fresh ways of looking at things. It's sort of like, you know, we have an image of how we are, but if we look in a mirror, we see things about ourselves that we never would have seen otherwise, and we can make changes. So similar thing for you and for your talent. So that would be a comment about this topic. And if you have some more follow-up questions that you want to ask about any of the things that we're raising here, let us know. There was another question about how do you know when is the right time to move? This is an intriguing question because many times I get called upon to work with professionals that are thinking, geez, I think I'm probably going to have to leave the organization in order to build my skills and grow. And it might very well be the case. But oftentimes, even as much as 90% of the time, we find that there are really some opportunities for people right where they are and that are available to them if they, again, look at things from a fresh perspective and if they take the opportunity to move forward effectively. And that they can do this and deal with some of the issues in their current job that are going to, frankly, follow them to their next job if they don't address them successfully. So, for example, people might have a question about, well, I need to make a change because my boss really doesn't give me the opportunities that I'd like to have. Well, if you haven't figured out how to ask for the opportunities that you need and to do that even with difficult people, that's probably a challenge that you're going to have in future work, even if you get a better boss to begin with. And that's part of overcoming and accelerating through obstacles. It's a part of the second key that's in the book. So there's some things that you can do right now. In fact, the best way to get the energy for you to move forward into developing your talent and even the energy to consider other opportunities is to make what you're doing now the very best that it can be, so that you have that sense of confidence, that sense of energy, that sense of ability to change things that will help you in carrying forward into the future. So those were a couple thoughts about the questions that came up. And again, if you've got other questions that you want to ask about that, please write in on the question section here for the webinar. I'll be glad to respond to those. And Jay, if his voice is able, will come in. So we're going to talk a little bit about each of these keys, because if you haven't had an opportunity to use them fully yet, or you've begun to use them, we want to learn from your experience, and we also want to share with you what we've learned about how to put them into practice. So the first key here is to power up your talent story. And that is to look at your talent as a story, in the sense that you have the ability to be in the role that you want, and you have the ability to define how that story moves forward, at least in far more dimensions than you may have ever thought. And that's what we want you to see the potential for and to explore how that could happen for you. So think of your talent as a story. think of how you may be a victim in your own story, or actually a bit player in someone else's story, because oftentimes when we give the power to somebody else, like, oh, okay, I've got a boss who won't give me opportunities, we become a victim, and it really becomes a story about our boss. In fact, that's what people would end up talking about. You know, I could do all this, but my boss won't let me. Then it really becomes the boss's story, not your story. So how do we shift into that hero role in our own story? And that's really where exploring a talent catalyst conversation is a huge and exciting opportunity. And in fact, this photo here from a workshop illustrates and responds to one of the questions that came up, which was, how can you do this with groups? And we're actually modeling. I'm there at the front of the room. Jay was taking the photograph in this one, but he was also working in this workshop. I'm modeling at the front of the room how a talent catalyst conversation happens, and then people are doing that conversation in pairs out in the audience. So we follow the method that great surgeons follow of the see one, do one, teach one. So this, in this one case, people are seeing the talent catalyst conversation demonstrated, they're doing one out in the audience, and then they're getting prepared to be able to teach it to other people so that it can extend out into the organization and isn't just something that is limited to them and to their own particular experience. So we're going to be getting in a moment to some questions to you about the experience that you may have had with a talent catalyst conversation and whether you've had an experience yet and how to help you in moving forward with that and in having additional talent catalyst conversations that can be helpful to you. So let's talk about connecting with a catalyst. The idea of a catalyst is what comes out of chemistry. You know, a catalyst is something in a chemical reaction that accelerates a response, that stimulates a reaction, and doesn't get used up in the process. And we found that this model and this metaphor is very important because it enables people to help spark something in other folks without taking over or directing what that person is doing and becoming, in essence, taking over their talent story from them. So this is critical in terms of getting the best brain thinking working, in terms of getting the most effective engagement of people's thoughts and ideas, and being successful in how that moves forward. So let's just talk a little bit about a talent catalyst, what's needed to have an effective talent catalyst, the criteria for that, how you can pick that and put it into, pick somebody and connect with them to be your talent catalyst. And here are the four things we found important. One is they have to be a willing partner. That is, they, not dragging them into something. You're actually asking them, hey, would you ask me the questions for a talent catalyst conversation and help me go through this experience. Then they need to follow the structured questions, because we so often become victims in our stories, and we're actually create the conditions to keep one another as victims in the stories, because we have a tendency out of our good natures to want to console one another and say, oh yeah, I know the economy's down, you're lucky to have a job, or oh yeah, with the boss you've got, I'm surprised you're able to get done even what you get done, or anything else. You can see any of those things which are well-meaning and consoling and empathetic, or certainly sympathetic, have the effect of really keeping the person in that victimized position, in the role of victim. So we've structured the 10 key steps in the talent catalyst conversation that you can complete in 45 minutes to an hour in order to keep you in that best brain thinking, or the person that you're being a talent catalyst for into that best brain thinking, to be successful in overcoming the fears and the concerns that get in the way of being able to use our talent more effectively. So we ask you, at least on your first few rounds with talent catalyst conversations, to follow the structured questions, see how they work for you, get some experience with them. You may find some variations you'll want to use after that, but they're really structured to fit together, and we want you to benefit from all the thought and care and research and efforts to prove those approaches that we've undertaken over the past years. It's also critically important for the catalyst to be a generous listener. Some of you may know about reflective listening. That's where you reflect the gist of what somebody says, um, and you also try to capture a bit of what their feeling or emotion is around it, so that you're not only getting the content but the energy and perspective that they're sharing. But we take listening one step further, and that is to hold for the person that you're listening to. So if you're being a talent catalyst for somebody else, that you're really thinking about um, what their hopes are and holding those for them, if you will, in trust, so that you're there for them and what they're hoping for their talent and for their career versus the agenda that you may have for them. Now, this means if somebody is a spouse or a partner or a coworker or whatever, it means setting aside what you might be thinking about is what you would hope the person would do, because then it becomes about your hopes and it becomes your talent story, not theirs, and then they can't be the hero of your talent story because it's no longer theirs. So this means you have to pick a talent catalyst carefully, or at least have the talent catalyst say, for the purposes of this 45 minutes or an hour discussion, yes, I'm willing to be your partner. I'm going to follow the questions. I'm going to reflect what I hear and hold forth for you your hopes and let you stay in charge. And I'm not going to try to drive or direct this. Now, if somebody's willing to do that, but you still feel like, yeah, but I think they really want me to do X or Y, that's going to constrain your thinking, and you probably ought to pick somebody else to be a talent catalyst for you instead of the person that you have in front of you, because you need somebody who can really fully take on these roles and be able to be that effective response for you. So we'd like to be sure that each of you is enjoying a talent catalyst conversation, that you're having it. You know that there's those 10 steps are broken into 3 rounds about hopes, opportunities, and actions. Those are the key elements, as you may recognize them. For any hero story, heroes are noted for the hopes that they have, even in the face of adversity. They're noted for their ability to ferret out opportunities, and they're noted for their willingness and their commitment to taking action. So the talent catalyst conversation gives you a way to move through all of those stages and to begin to create this talent story for yourself that has you positioned solidly as the hero. So we want to know what your experience has been with having a talent catalyst conversation, and whether or not you've been able to have one thus far, or if you're still looking. So let us ask you a question about that and see what your response is, and then we can help you figure out how to get the most value. And while you're answering this question, I do want to respond to a question that got written in here from a mid-career professional experiencing career growth blocks and curious how a catalyst who hasn't experienced this type of block may help. That's a great question, because oftentimes we think that, well, we have to go to an expert. We have to go to somebody who's been exactly in our shoes in order to find the answers that we need. And what we found is quite the contrary. That in fact, if we just go back to people who are in our own circumstances, they tend to very quickly start to describe, well, here's how I handled the situation, or here's what I'd suggest that you do. In other words, they start to get you off from your talent story into their talent story. And the most important thing is for you to really continue to be the central figure in your own story. The other thing that we found, and you'll see this in the questions, so the first step in the 10 steps of the talent catalyst conversation is about what are your hopes. The next one is to address the concerns that you've got. But the third one invites you to look upon your success stories in dealing with similar circumstances in the past. often we overlook or we discount the relevance of some successes we've had elsewhere. And as a result, we don't go about really um, tapping our own stories of success that could help us in moving forward. That's going to be far more powerful for you because those success stories, those patterns that you've used that have worked for you in the past are going to be the things that are going to help you in figuring out what's right for you as possible approaches to deal with what's in front of you versus, what might have worked for somebody else but doesn't really fit for you. So that's how the Talent Catalyst conversation actually runs counter to the folk wisdom that you need to have somebody who's in your own shoes in order to tell you how to step forward on your path. So what I'm observing here is that really only a few of you have had a Talent Catalyst conversation, and when you did, it worked great. Most of you haven't, largely because you haven't had a chance to get that organized. But in some instances, you don't have someone to be a talent catalyst for you. If that's the case, we don't want you to lose out. We do encourage you to search for such a person, but we also have certified talent champions, people that Jay and myself and people that have worked through a rigorous course of study with us that we could connect you with to have a Talent Catalyst conversation and to get started. You'll see on the website, takechargeofyourtalent.com, you can click on the Get Started button, and it'll take you to a set of questions that you can answer and some information you can send to us so that we can match you up with somebody to have a great Talent Catalyst conversation experience. So let's again, following our practice here, and check out what are some answers to questions that you have. So some of the questions that came up about the Talent Catalyst conversation was, is there a sample Talent Catalyst conversation available? And the short answer is yes. We put a transcript of a Talent Catalyst conversation for you in the resources section of the book. So you can, in a summary of it, so that starts at page 157, and we invite you to read that. And for those of you that prefer to listen, we're delighted to report that the book is being picked up to become an audiobook and a digital audio resource that will be available. But for now, the best immediate source is the sample Talent Catalyst conversation in the back of the book and the live experience with somebody who is a talent catalyst that could work with you. So we had another question of what if you have a million hopes? In other words, what if you start off on the first question and it's, oh my gosh, where do I begin? What are my hopes? The interesting thing about the first question is a lot of people tell us, oh, I'm not sure about what my hopes are. Nobody's ever asked me what my hopes are. That's exactly the power of the question. A lot of times our questions are about, well, what are your goals or your objectives, or what somebody, your boss or somebody else expects of you, or what's something that someone with, your training, your education, your experience ought to be doing. Well, that's all pushing you out of your own talent story into somebody else's story. So sometimes connecting with your hopes takes a bit of time. It takes a little bit of follow-up with regard to why those hopes are important, to sort of tease out what's really at play for that. It'll take a few minutes to get to that point, and then to ask the person, well, which of those hopes is most important to you in going forward at this time with your talent? And that's a great opportunity for you to explore this further and think about, well, what really is most important to me out of this? When you do that, you get to a core foundation from which you can build on solid rock versus the shifting sands of what other people think or about for you, or what someone else has been successful doing. Those are going to be the sirens, like I call them when I lived in Silicon Valley and was an entrepreneur starting companies. There's like the sirens of Silicon Valley, like Ulysses, who had to plug his ears and be tied to the mast because he would hear these calls from all these other sources about what to do. So we had to take some real rigor around this. But you don't have to worry about getting any of these questions perfect. And in fact, the best thing to do is kind of move through the conversation so you do get it done in 45 minutes or an hour, because it builds on one another. And actually a later question in the conversation is about, well, what are your hopes now that you've had some discussion about the opportunities and resources that are available to you? Is your idea about your hopes expanding? So you don't have to have the perfect answers. And you don't have to feel like, oh, I'm being judged whether my hopes are good enough or something. That's not the case. That a good talent catalyst is there as a generous listener holding out your hopes for you and supporting you in that process. And then there was the question about tips for groups. And again, I would highlight to you the example I gave about that we found so useful in the see one, do one, teach one model. It's also highlighted in the book and a good resource for you to use. So with that, we've really been talking about the first key, the critical key of power up your talent story. And we want to move on now to the second key, which is how to accelerate through obstacles. So that's something to do after you've had your talent catalyst conversation. We encourage you to get the talent catalyst conversation first, because that'll really help stimulate fresh ideas, fresh thinking, new potential directions for yourself that will come from that conversation. So before you start thinking about all the obstacles in the path, be sure you're sorted out the direction that you want to go. So let's take a look at some things around the second key and talk a little bit about what might be getting in your way. So I'd like to invite you again to respond to a survey polling question here to indicate, what are the kinds of obstacles that get in your path. You can click on as many of them as are relevant for you, but it'll help us to focus this discussion on amplifying and clarifying some of the key things that would be most helpful to you. So take a moment and respond, if you will. And again, if you have other questions that you'd like to be asking, we invite you to use the question function on the webinar to add those in. I'm also checking to see if anybody has their hand raised. I don't see anyone with a hand raised at the moment. So we'll continue with the presentation here, but if you wish to ask a question in some more detail, we invite you to do so. And we'll take just a moment more to give you, the few of you that haven't yet responded, a chance to respond as you're thinking about this. Okay, let's share the results here and see where we're at. So, no clear action plan seemed to be the biggest obstacle that people found in all this, not having enough resources followed behind that, and then limited opportunities, and some lack of confidence. What key number 2 does is really address all the different ways to accomplish these things, and let's talk a little bit about those and about what's going to work effectively for you in helping this be successful and to accelerate through these obstacles. And I want to highlight that actually Jay and I were quite thoughtful and intentional about the phrase accelerate through obstacles. Many people get bogged down in obstacles. It's a little bit like if you're got a wheelbarrow and you're running through, a muddy garden. You're not going to get through it better or more successfully by going slowly and just having those wheels go deeper and deeper into what they're bogged down in. You need to move quickly or figure out a way to get around the mud holes rather than to get drawn into them. So one of the things that you'll see, there's a whole chapter about how to keep your hopes humming. Some of the things that are there, I love the example that Jay shared for the book about, if you wanted to learn how to play the guitar, would you do better if you had the guitar in the closet or if you put it on the living room table where you'd see it each day and think, oh yeah, I want to do something about that. I want to really learn how to play that guitar. So thinking through how can you keep those hopes and the things that you want to be doing with your talent foremost in front of you is going to be critical to your being successful. And there's some very conscious ways. We have a Take 5 process that you can read about. Take 5 minutes at the start of each day to think about what your hopes are and what the opportunities are going to be in the day, or what opportunities you can make in the day to bring those hopes to life. So I encourage you to take a look at those. There are a lot of ways that you can look at new opportunities. We talk about a healthy stretch. A healthy stretch is something to think of yourself like a rubber band. Rubber bands don't work if they're limp because there's no energy in them. But if they're stretched too far, they'll snap. A healthy stretch is somewhere in between where there's some energy, there's some attention, there's some action, and that it's working right for you. And we've identified ways that you can create for yourself what that healthy stretch is and how you can have a growth mindset that can enable you to be far more effective in the work that you have and far more rewarded in the results that you accomplish. In terms of expanding resources, that's huge. Jay was just in Houston. That's where he got the cold that's keeping him from talking and sharing his wisdom with you in this webinar. But he did a whole workshop in Houston about people using resources, and his own example of him taking his resources and capabilities in singing and theater and other things to make taking charge of his talent real for himself. So he wrote a song, "The Perfect Time is, the Perfect Moment is Now." He found people to help him do it. He targeted some time to get it done. He really sort of pulled in his inner qualities of persistence and creativity and his ability to rally people around him, all of which are critical things to be successful and to get support for it. And he's even looking at maybe he could crowdsource this song. We're going to be making it available on the web soon. I think we're the first book that is going to have its own song. So we'll share that with you, and if you are on our email list, you'll be getting the first word of when that's available, or if you have liked us, the Take Charge of Your Talent page on Facebook, you'll be hearing from us there, or on the LinkedIn group for Take Charge of Your Talent. Those are all ways that you can take a look at it. But what we're trying to do, and what Jay did masterfully with that, is really model for you how you can go from an idea to a result by tapping one of the resources around you. There's a great technique that's available and it's being used actively in the software world called a mashup. And so you'll see in key number 2 the whole idea of a mashup of the resources you have connecting together to figure out how to advance the hopes that you've got. And you'll be amazed how in a short period of time you can identify hundreds of resources that can help you move forward. So for the 50% of you that don't have enough resources, our answer to you would be, well, you probably have a lot more that you have either not used as fully as you might, or that you could connect together in ways that you haven't tried yet that could really help you move forward effectively. And that's a big part of what key number 2 helps you to do. And then, of course, here, a clear action plan, a talent action plan. If you go on the website, you'll see the story of Trudy. And she's one of the videos. So if you go to the home page and you click on other videos, you'll see a video of Trudy talking about her experience. And for a big thing for her was to have a clearly laid out talent action plan. These are 8 questions that you can answer, and in fact we encourage you to talk with somebody else about it, because it's so much easier to come up with the ideas and let them flow, and get them out and get the job done. If somebody's interviewing you and asks you about, okay, well, what is it you want to accomplish? Why? Who needs to be involved? What resources have you identified? How are you going to report in to somebody on this that you have a point of support and accountability? Very simple, practical things, but they work whether you're a CEO or you're a frontline employee. And for the 90% of you that don't have a clear action plan, if you do the Talent Catalyst conversation, you work through the topics of how to line up the resources and opportunities. There's a very straightforward way that in about 20 minutes you can come up with a talent action plan, something to get you going, something you can have put on the refrigerator, something that you can include in your cubicle or your office, whatever, to help you be successful in moving forward. So those are some key things that we wanted to highlight for you around this whole question of how to accelerate through obstacles, because they're going to happen. And let me just check to see what some of the questions are that are coming in here. It strikes me that one of my limitations is that I'm seeking to express talent through job alone rather than through the expanded resources suggestion. Have you found that one of the obstacles is equating job with the only way to express talent? Yes. Great question. And in fact, you'll note on the first page of the book, we articulate how we are looking at talent, because a lot has been written about this. You'll find people, in fact, there's whole books and industries around, finding your strengths, etc. But we talk about your talent as not simply your strength or skill set. It is your self-expression, the joyful demonstration of your unique abilities that benefit both you and the world. So your talent is certainly far beyond your work, and our experience is that people that nurture their talent outside of work often find renewed energy and enthusiasm for their work, and vice versa. That in fact it's all an energy loop, and that you can make progress at any one point along the loop, and it will rebound to the benefit of others. This is one of the reasons why take charge of your talent, and the whole idea of putting talent development in the hands of the talented rather than having it be a top-down directive from management works so powerfully, because it is this generative, energy, encouraging process that enables this to all work effectively and to redound to the benefit of yourself and the organization that you're with. So it isn't as if exploring other talents is seditious act or something of that nature. In fact, places like Google give their people 20% of their time to just do whatever they want to do. Now, they are confident that because they have a strong nurturing environment and that encourages the expression of talent, that people will figure out productive ways to use the results of that talent and that time and focus that will benefit the organization. And frankly, they've got lots of new innovations that have come about for things that people came up with that didn't start with a directive from management that we want you to work on this and solve this problem, but rather bubbled up from the people themselves. And that's what we really want for you, is that sense of bubbling up and effectiveness. So we're going to turn here to the next key in the equation. So just before we do, we want you to think about accelerating through obstacles being like skiing down a ski slope, and thinking of the obstacles like moguls. How you navigate the rough spots, the little hills and valleys, is part of what can make the experience of skiing great fun, and it's part of what can make pursuing your talent a great joy for you. So we encourage you to think of the obstacles as those moguls in a ski slope, and helping you to figure out how to have fun navigating through them rather than getting bogged down in them. So bringing the value home for yourself and for others. The third key is about multiplying the payoffs for yourself and others. This is key because what we've described in key number 1 and key number 2 are things that you'll be doing, and you want to get a big payoff for those, and we want you to have such a big payoff. And we're going to talk a little bit about how that works and what is most effective in accomplishing that. So first step in that is to translate what you know into concrete value. Take the things that you know and that you're learning and the skills you're developing and translate that into things that are tangible. That's critical so that you have some enduring career assets. So it isn't just, well, I've done this and I've done that. That doesn't translate into something that's going to help you advance in the position that you're in the organization that you're in, or in the organization or opportunities that you might like to go to. You've got to make that something that's going to be tangible to other people. So it's not just like, oh yeah, I've got a story to tell about my talent. I've actually made that story concrete and tangible by putting it into action. And so I'm going to give an example of that here with the next component, which is how to build your career assets, thinking of yourself as a brand. Walter Landor, the father of modern branding, came up with a definition that a brand is a promise that creates a preference. In other words, it's what you are promising to somebody else that creates a preference for them. So for example, for myself, my brand is to bring forth the best in others. So that's a promise that I'm going to do that in working with you or working with other people or in other organizations to bring out your best. Well, I not only have to have that brand, but I have to have some proof points of it. You know, what's the tangible demonstration that I've done that and I know what that's about and that I can deliver that? Well, that's a couple of the proof points for me have been, I wrote the book, How Great Decisions Get Made, a process for bringing forth the best in people when they've got tough issues to decide together, and they've got divergent interests, and co-authored now with Jay the book, Take Charge of Your Talent, which is how to bring forth the best for people's talent and to help them do that with and for one another. And then the experience and the testimonials and the other things that you can see on the website that Jay and I put up there from our individual and our collective practices, so that it's very tangible what that is. So it isn't just us saying that about ourselves. It's you can go look and find the proof for yourself as well. What that does is it creates opportunities. And so this is a powerful equation. If you're not getting the opportunities that you want, you can work this equation backwards. You can start and say, okay, I'd like to have an opportunity like the following. So for example, you'll read in the book about Tony. Tony was a police chief. Tony wanted to be a general manager, but everybody just looked at him and said, that's Tony the police chief. I remember him in his uniform, you know, with his badge and everything else. Tony's the police chief. But Tony wanted to grow. Tony wanted to do something else. So he said, I want to be a general manager, able to leverage my talents and skills more broadly in the organization and to have expanded leadership opportunities. Well, what Tony needed to do was go back over here to his brand. He needed to figure out, okay, if that's what I want, what's my brand? Well, my brand needs to be that I'm a problem solver, resolving and helping to solve big issues in an organization that transcend the police department and go to broader needs and interests. Well, how could he demonstrate that? Well, it turned out that he was actually a member of a task force trying to figure out new ways of structuring services in his agency to be more efficient and to deliver better results. Well, that's good. That's a project, but that isn't entirely tangible to people outside of his organization. So then he thought, well, okay, I could write an article about and get it published about how you can consolidate services, improve efficiencies, and how that can be valuable to the bottom line for a local government. So you can see how he worked through this equation to figure out exactly what he needed to do in order to be successful. Now, the benefit of him doing that was that he also provided information and pathways for other people to be successful. And that's key in this. If it's all just about you, people aren't going to support you on a continuing basis because it's just about you. And you're not going to get the support from the organization that you need or the opportunities to demonstrate your capabilities. So that's where figuring out how to share these things so that other people can work with them and make them available is important. Worked with the city of Palo Alto. They came up with their own internal wiki. They called it Palopedia, like Wikipedia, but it's Palopedia. And through the Take Charge of Your Talent program, 80 people entered 190 pages of new and effective ways of getting things done or sharing the knowledge they had. Some people put knowledge up there so they wouldn't get asked the same questions over and over, so they could go learn something else, something new, something different. So those are some great ways in which what's good for you is also good for your organization. So it's a win-win. It's not something that you're doing at the expense of the organization. It's rather something that you're doing with for yourself that also supports the organization, and in turn your organization supports you. So we want to take a look at a polling question, see how this is playing out for you. Are you ready to multiply the payoffs for yourself and others from your talent? So check as many of these as you may have in place, and this will give you a quick read on your readiness to have your talent make a difference and to have it be tangible and have it to be something that's got proof to it and something that you've shared with others, or maybe some other ideas that you'd like to offer to us. So we'll take a look. Meanwhile, I'm going to double check on questions. I don't see an additional question here at the moment, so we'll just wait for the poll to close, and we'll talk about it and some closing ideas for you to move forward. Give you a moment or two more to see if any additional responses. Okay. So here are the results. So it's very encouraging to see that 71% of you have shared your career assets with others. That's good. That means that you're you have a giving nature to you. What I think looks to me like a huge opportunity here is the opportunity for the majority of you that haven't yet made your talent tangible to do so, and to have a clear brand and proof points that are going to create opportunities for you. That looks like it's a huge opportunity in the audience that we have assembled today, and something that, as you, again, it's a sequential thing, working through key number 1, key number 2, but getting to key number 3 and thinking about, well, how do I really pull this together? Now, you may be starting to wonder, wow, I got these 3 keys, and it takes time, and how do we work this through, and what are the opportunities here, and how long is this all going to take? And that's why we encourage you to tap the Take Charge community, so you've got some encouragement, some support for that. We've got a complimentary email list that you can access, sign up for on the website. If you haven't done that already, please do that after this session. There's the website location. And then think about how you can move forward with this. You can do the Talent Catalyst conversation, the first key, in 45 minutes to an hour. You know, you might take a couple days, a couple weeks to go through the second key to get through to a talent action plan that many of you are looking for, and getting some traction on that, and it might be another month or two as you're working through that plan, and then translating what you're learning and developing into these solid career assets for yourself and benefits for others. So it may be, you know, a 3-month process. In fact, that's typically what we look at as a 90-day program for people to move through this. When people want to do that with us professionally, where we're doing that with them, we set up a 90-day program so that you can see results right from the first conversation and also how those translate into real assets over time. But think about your plan. Think about what you want to get done and how you want to move forward. And that's going to bring us to our next polling question here, which is, what would you like to do to make 2013 your best year yet? So here are some opportunities for you and a chance for you to express your intentions so that you can identify what it is that you'd like to be doing out of this discussion that would help you in making a difference and help 2013 to truly be your best year yet, despite the economy, despite all the buts that are between you and where you want to be. How can you overcome them and move forward effectively? So we'll take a moment longer here to take a look at this and see how the results come up and how you'd like to move forward with your intentions. So about 3/4 of you have responded. I want to give a little more time here for the rest of you to express your intentions. And while we're doing that, Jay, would you like to add a thought while we're waiting to see what these results come out at and what people would like to do going forward? Do you have a voice that's functioning at this point? I know it's really tough for you, so I don't want to strain you, but I know people would love to hear from you.
I'd just like to thank everyone for coming. And it was a pleasure actually just to sit and listen to you, Don. It was a great refresher course for me. I kept going, oh yeah, I forgot that was in the book. Oh yeah, that's really cool. So it was fun being an audience. Maybe my cold gave me this opportunity to do that. Thank you very much.
All right. Well, and that's the thing that we hope that you will experience in doing this work with and for one another, is that actually every time you do a talent catalyst for a conversation for somebody else or with to help them as they're talking and thinking through what they'd like to do, you're really helping yourself because you're helping to reinforce within yourself these practices that are going to redound to your benefit in whatever you're doing in your life. So I can see here from the results that 75% of you are looking forward to completing the 3 keys for yourself. We noted at the beginning that some of you have already done the 3 keys, so that looks like that would get all of you into that successful completion place. Another good chunk of you are interested in tapping this community that we've created, and we hope that you'll do that. You can also look at the blog and comment on the blogs or present questions that you'd like us to address in the blogs. We truly want to make this a successful service for you. You can share the experience with others. Some of you want to gain additional training, and some of you would actually like to make this your business or part of your practice of bringing this work forward into the world and doing it on a bigger scale with individuals and with groups. And we'd be absolutely delighted to help and support you in doing that. All of that relates to our big hope, which is not only to make 2013 your best year yet, but we have a vision that we hope you will share. It's called the 2020 vision, and that is that by the year 2020, 20 million people in 20 countries will have the keys and be using those keys to enjoy their talent and to get benefits for themselves and for others. We're really delighted that some significant progress, even in the first 5 weeks of the book being out in the world, is taking place. It's being republished by HarperCollins in India, where there's 1.45 billion people. We're getting translation in Portugal. In Portuguese, rather, and in Brazil, a country of 197 million people, and we hope that we'll be able to, with your help and your participation and your good wishes and your goodwill, to move this forward together. So with that, I want to thank you for your questions. I want to thank you for your interest. in your early acquisition of the book, Take Charge of Your Talent, and want to invite you to contact us with any questions that you may have, any things that we can do to be helpful to you to take charge of your talent and to enjoy doing it. So thanks so much, and have a great day, and let us know how you're making 2013 your best year yet. We'd love to hear your stories and examples. Share them with us by phone, email, website, whatever works for you. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks so much. And thank you, Jay, and get well soon.